Secondhand feedback isn't feedback, it's a shortcut. And one leader learned that lesson the hard way. Stay tuned for another great episode of Bad Boss Confessional. Hi, I'm Beth Fahey, and this is Bad Boss Confessional, where real leaders get honest about the mistakes that made them better. Before we dive in, a quick thank you to our sponsors for making this show possible. Do you love running on EOS? Try Streti, the EOS platform people love. Native integrations and extra features help you manage people, projects, process, and engagement. Connected to your favorite EOS tools and all in one place. You love EOS. It's time to love the platform you're running it on. Try Streti free at streti.com. That's STRETY.com. Streti, the EOS platform people love. Let's be honest, hiring the right people is hard. That's why I love Titus Talent Strategies. Their whole person hiring approach helps you find and keep A players who align with your values, and they back it with an industry-leading guarantee. Best part? Titus Talent Strategies is included in the Entrepreneurial Toolkit for companies running on EOS. Check them out at titustalent.com/EOS. My guest today is fellow expert EOS implementer and two-time published author whose work sits at the intersection of business growth and human potential. Based in St. Louis, she's built a reputation for helping entrepreneurial leaders build teams that are healthy, accountable, and actually firing on all cylinders, what she calls maximizing your return on individual. Her books, including the Forbes book title The Human Team and the co-authored Grow, have earned Eric Hoffer and Amazon bestseller recognition, and she's been recognized as one of the top 100 innovators and entrepreneurs in her region. Welcome to Bad Boss Confessional, Jeanet.
Hi.
Oh, Jeanet, I'm so glad to see you on the podcast. I don't get to talk to you often enough. We typically run into each other at our trainings or at conferences or things like that. So I'm really excited to get to learn more about you today.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. I also, I think, had some approach avoidance to it because it took me a while to get on the schedule because there's something about confessing your bad bossness that, you don't wanna go there.
Yeah. Well, you're not the first. Sometimes we have to beg people to be on the podcast. But I'm glad our schedules aligned and the stars aligned and all that. So one of the things that I always like to start with is just getting some background on our guests. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind just giving us a brief 1 or 2 minute history of your career to date.
Yeah, I don't mind, although I start feeling my age when I do this because I was on a podcast a few weeks ago and they're like, "Tell us the history." I was like, "Oh, man, I'm going back to the mid-90s. We're going back 30 years to when I was early days of tech and the internet and being a project lead and then becoming a director, in that organization, so helping, launch the early days of the internet, and it feels like so long ago. And then having my early career in basically corporate America, large private family owned businesses that were $1 billion businesses. So family owned, large family owned business and privately held for hundreds of years. And then a joint venture with American Express. And so these corporate environments. And then during the internet bust in of 2000, I went out on my own and started my own business. And that led me to eventually joining another leadership team in right around 2010, 2011 that exploded and imploded. And that led me to EOS. So I've had a couple of iterations of but the funny thing is, throughout it all, I've been an entrepreneur. So even in the corporate environment, I was in an entrepreneurial team, a team that created the first gift card in the world. I was on so I'm not on the patent, I'm not on the core team, but I was on the team. So the innovation division of that organization and running all those projects, and then early days of internet entrepreneurism within those corporate environments, and then out on my own in EOS. So It's always been, dealing with entrepreneurial leaders since the beginning. I didn't realize that in the early days. I thought I was just on the corporate fast track.
Yeah. So what do you love about entrepreneurs?
I love the creation. I love the passion. And I guess in a way, if I was to be truthful, I'm a little drawn to the drama. There's some adrenaline rush to kind of the highs and lows and the passion and the and all of that that comes with it, and trying to figure out how do we get this kind of I hate calling it like this genius, but we all have genius, right? So the genius of that creation, the genius of innovation, the genius of leading other, new things into the future, and kind of the madness that comes with genius. How do we settle that down? So I've always been one of those people who likes to take that complexity and simplify it and turn it into action.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like art, isn't it? I always likened entrepreneurship to art. It's you don't know this thing that you're making and you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and you're trying to, bring a team together and it's collaborative and I don't know. I love the entrepreneurial world too. I never heard it associated with drama, but that makes sense for me as well. I mean, I was, in film production and obviously right, addicted to the drama. But I mean, what we do now, which is so funny, is we try to reduce the drama wherever possible in with entrepreneurs.
It's the harnessing of the drama or the nicer way that we say it in EOS is the harnessing of human energy. That's just harnessing human drama. That's just like humans are dramatic and natural and we were never trained for any of this, most of us. I mean, I was thinking and reflecting on this when bosses, when we teach leadership in EOS, we teach how to be a great boss and thinking about bad bosses. And I was like, in reflection, we're never trained to be bosses because who spends their whole childhood in school and college learning how to harness the energy of a bunch of other adults? We just don't learn it.
Right. I mean, I would say whenever I ask that question in Great Boss workshops, I would say when I ask the question, have you had any training, any leadership or management training before you became a boss? And I would say one maybe in 30 people has had formal training.
Shocking.
And
We're
it's
just
so important. It's
we're
what
just sent out into the wild.
exactly, or as Renee always like to say, you just dropped into the deep end of the pool and you're expected to sink or swim. So when you came up and all of these different iterations, and it sounded like you worked with a lot of different teams, I'm curious what your confession might be.
I actually had 2, and ironically, they include the same person at 2 different points in my life, so, if he's gonna listen to this, he's gonna be like, "Well, she's finally admitting it."
Okay. Well,
Yeah, so it's I think it starts with that, in the corporate environment when I was doing the early days of the internet development, so I was the bridge person between marketing and technology, trying to figure out this new thing, the internet, and how do we leverage it in our business? How do we create interaction? Or in the early days, what we called communities of interest, which is just now social media. We were creating database driven websites, which is now apps, right? So all this kind of early tech time. And I was really proficient at project management and getting things done. So gathering up this complex thing, making action out of it. We launched 14 web initiatives in like 4 months, fully baked, like interactive, not just landing pages, and internal, external, password protected, date, ones that where you could check before debit cards and gift cards allowed really you to check your balance online. We were pioneering that and getting permission through security to do it. So I was running these teams. So I was the leader of a team or bossing a team, and eventually was given a direct report of my own in that. But I was early on told, "Wow, you guys are getting a lot done, but Jeanette, you're not just a task manager. They're burning out." Well, really what they were doing was they were complaining to this person and this person just gave me the best feedback they could. And I went, "Oh, so we should stop and celebrate or we should like we just can't just keep going, right?" And I was fine with it. They were not. So when I was given this direct report, who happened to be, it was unsettling. So I was in my late 20s, mid to late 20s. He was 15 years older than me probably. And so not only was I not trained to be a boss, I was a task manager boss. I was younger, so my confidence wasn't there. I didn't know how to lead, coach, manage the situation. So pretty much just left him to his own devices. Thankfully, he was pretty capable and it worked out. But I was not available with time and attention. I didn't give clear direction. I really sucked at reward and recognize. So this moving through task managing, never stopping to say, "Hey, you did a great job there," or "Let's give some debrief to this so we can both learn and get more masterful and better at this." I just went from one thing to the next. And so when that person had told me, "You're burning your team out, you're burning out the teams you're leading, you're burning out this person that reports to you," I stopped. And for whatever reason, on my own, no, again, no training, a bad boss just trying to figure it out. Um, I decided, being a good project manager, I should figure out like what's a way I could manage this. And so I started blocking Wednesday at 9 a.m. for 15 minutes. I just sat and reflected on the week. And I would spend the whole week after that reflection thinking about, who did I need to thank? Did I need to buy a gift? Did I need to write a note? Did I need to do some kind of public recognition? Just a quick handshake? And I would do that every week until it became natural, which took me about 6 months or more, where I didn't have to block the 15 minutes anymore to know it. I would instantaneously see the good, reflect on it. I would instantaneously, within 24 hours, give feedback on things that needed correction, specifically and positively, but I would correct it. And so I started to get good at reward and recognize just through that one small behavior. But poor Greg, because he's gonna know who he is. Poor Greg was like, I'm stuck with this really young, really driven person who's now my boss, and she's way younger than me, and never thanks me, never supports me, never gives me time and attention." Then many years later, probably 10, 15 years later, I, for a client of mine, had written a business plan. It got funded. I ended up on the team. I recruit Greg to be on my team. Now I have a team of 6 and Greg is one of them. And, I still no training in being a boss. Still not sure how to be a great leader and manager, and unfortunately was put into a situation where I had to give secondhand information and feedback to Greg in the form of a performance review that where he had really done nothing wrong. I was the one who'd done something wrong. Didn't know I was supposed to, I didn't realize I had done it. The people above me were forcing me into the situation, so I had this one-on-one, really crappy conversation, not too unlike the one you guys videotaped for How to Be a Great Boss. Just, like, really messy and unclear, and I was trying to correct a behavior I had never witnessed, and someone else told me I had to correct it. He actually never even did it. It was me who did it, and I didn't realize that they were talking. It just, it was a mess, and just giving a performance review and corrective action on something that he had nothing to do with, and I think it halfway through that conversation, I, like, sat there and I went, and I actually just then I think I bad boss confessed to him. I said, "I don't even know why we're doing this. I don't even think this was you, as we're talking it through and you're questioning and I'm questioning." I said, "I think this is me and they're just making me do this because we're having some bad boss moments everywhere." And and so I'm doing this behavior to save my job because they want me to do this corrective action when there's no corrective action to take. And we both sat there and we kinda laughed. He'd known me for quite a while at that point, and we just said, yeah, that go figure, that we're having this very dysfunctional moment in this organization, and I'm having my bad boss moment again with you." So,
Wow. Full circle.
yeah, yeah. And the poor guy, he got all my bad bossing.
Well, I mean, maybe there's a reason for that. I mean, maybe it sounds like he was a good guy.
He was really good at his job. He was a really good friend.
Mm.
Yeah, it was a safe place to be a bad boss,
Mhm.
thankfully. And I could be open, honest, and say, "Look, I'm messing up right now. Let's just stop this discussion and let's just talk about what we see is really going on versus all the secondhand information, all the forcing me to do something that is not right to do. This is clearly not right. Let's just stop it now." So thankfully, I didn't have to go back and make amends and say I'm sorry later on. We did it real time. And that did transform it. We did become unified. We did get clear and on the same page. How are we going to navigate an organization that's clearly not managing things well? Even still, both of us not trained to lead at this point. So I was desperate for leadership management training. I was getting some of it kind of sidebar through how to deal with difficult people webinars and seminars. I was getting it through um, emerging leader programs. I was getting bits and pieces, but nothing that really landed until I started teaching EOS. And I was like, oh, LMA, 5 leadership practices, 5 management practices. And I started practicing them myself. And that's when I started changing as far as like when I would lead a team or a group of people.
Well, I mean, I just have to let's look back at what you actually did do though during your career. The high points that you talked about that maybe you didn't even realize, and maybe there's folks out there listening that don't realize that some of these things that they already naturally do, they can leverage even further. The first one was a clarity break. You took the 15 minutes a week.
Yeah.
You probably didn't call it a clarity break then,
Yeah.
right? But that time blocking and looking at your calendar, thinking about what did I learn last week? What do I need to think about the week ahead? And taking that time to think is actually so important. And so you did that naturally. You looked also like at the moment that where you had the second encounter with Greg and you're having that moment and just kind of calling it and saying, you know, moment of vulnerability here. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing right now, but this seems like BS. And having a real conversation. I mean, there you are, you're having a quarterly conversation. You didn't know it was a quarterly conversation. What's working, what's not working, right? So you're doing all the things. And I think that for a lot of us, we're trying to grasp on to anything that we can, right? You crucial conversations are, there I don't know how many conversation books there are out there. Fierce Conversations, Crucial Conversations, Radical Candor. There's so many of these books out there because we know that we suffer from this thing. We recognize it in ourselves. We know that we're part of the problem. And for a lot of us, we're just grabbing on to whatever book we can put our hands on.
Oh yeah. I think it's all of us. No, all of us know what good bosses look and feel like. It's the tangibleness of it that was kind of elusive. And then, so I wanted to be a good boss. I wanted to be a good leader and manager. I wanted to be someone who could coach others. Just the like cohesive, holistic approach to it was elusive to me. I would get bits and pieces and parts. So that desperation of I don't want to be a bad boss, but I was having a bad boss moment twice with Greg. And where I needed to do some sort of correction, like you said, take a clarity break, do some thankfulness and gratitude towards others, take pauses so that we're moving fast. There's a lot going on. This is a high innovative area, but what can we do to celebrate every moment that we're in this? And then when you're in the middle of what felt like a corrective action moment that was secondhand information, so I really couldn't correct anything, and I was being just a bad feedback boss and punitive for no reason when I was really needing to step back and say, "Let's regroup here. Let's just get real and talk about where we really are. Is this really a scenario that needs to be corrected? Are we being manipulated, forced, or just in a dysfunctional organization to do something that's really not right to do?" It did not feel right. And I knew in my gut, I was like, "Gosh, I'm doing this and I'm being forced to do it, and it's just not right." And then when we finally just said the words, we both just smiled and looked at each other, and there was kind of this like, "Okay, we're moving forward through kind of the pain together now."
Yeah. Yeah. And so, how has this influenced your own writing? You've got two books out there. If you could talk a little bit about each one of them, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so the first one was The Human Team, and the subtitle of that one, "So you created a team, but people show up." So that one was really, about extending the idea of healthy into team dynamics. So in EOS, we're always talking vision, traction, healthy, and I felt like there was more depth there. In my early career, I worked at a large performance improvement organization, so we were always talking about team dynamics, incentives, and motivation. And then, being a marketing and sales profession in person, we're always talking about what's gonna trigger behavior in humans and get the right reaction and response. So I've always been kind of fascinated by humans and teams. And then these experience I had on running teams, just how do we get at their potential and how do we get them to work together? And was always really fascinated by that dynamic, and it through multiple obviously I'm an info sponge, so collecting and reading and seminaring and experimentation and bad bossing and whatever it is, pulling it all together and saying, "Oh," so and lots of therapy, to be frankly. It's like, so you learn about human dynamics, you want to go to a therapist, you'll learn a lot about yourself and others. So I ended up realizing that we need to pull people out of nature the way we show up, which is just instinctual. And so we're naturally showing up as wired to resist. We naturally show up to the negative. We naturally show up just survival modes many times. So we bring all these adults into the workplace in their natural state. And then we try to do all these nurture activities to them. It's like, "I'll just give you more training. We'll have a pizza party. I'll give you an award," or, we just do things to them, hoping that changes, and they don't last. And how do we bridge the gap from nature to nurture? And so kind of pulling together and flipping Maslow on his head and saying, "That's great for individuals. What about turning that into something for team dynamics to say, if we got 6 facets of human needs met, the team can function better together and really come together and activate human potential, in which then we can nurture better outcomes." And so that was kind of an accumulation of 25 years of just experience and info knowledge. And then I pulled an organizational behavior psychologist into it just to validate the work, and so she writes something in every chapter just to validate the science behind it. And so that was just kind of a fun passion project, but I use it a lot just when I'm talking to people, when I give feedback, whenever I'm thinking about how to run a project that's gonna involve more than one person, and then so I pull that human need 6 facets of human needs into a lot of the work I do.
The team dynamics training is almost non-existent.
Mm.
When I think about the types of professional development that my clients want to offer folks, like they'll have me come in and do a great boss workshop, and that's one with many people. And then they have to internally process the information, which is good information and it's very introspective and it has them looking inward. But I can't think of any training in EOS or anything that I've experienced which talks about how are we working together? How do we function better as a team? I'm sure that it does exist out there, but the entrepreneurial community is, I don't think, has that kind of financial depth in order to find this type of professional development. And I think that this is a topic that you could write several books on.
I wrote several sub books to it because as I started going after the if once you write a book, I didn't add that and I should have said this, and you gather more info. So there's a lot of small PDF ebooks and extending it. But yeah, there's not a lot of like team dynamic training. I think some of the facilitation teaching for some coaches is out there, team dynamics and facilitation. There's I think EOS has a lot of it baked in. We just it's the science and psychology behind EOS in a lot of ways. Why we only work with leadership teams and not individual leaders. How we do rollout, right, is team sport. And so I think it's baked into EOS in a lot of ways, which I'm very thankful for. But I just had a call with a client last week who was saying, "I've got a team that's really struggling with this," and because I can kind of step back from it and not be in it, I can go, "Oh, when I hear this and I hear that, I can hear the patterns." And so I was reflecting that, have you considered, have you considered that, and the most likely play out of these scenarios would look like this if you were to get their needs met and then get them to a nurturing spot. Right now you're dealing with a nature reaction. And I got a call back saying it played out exactly like you said. And I said what you said to say when I saw it starting to play out, when I saw that human moment appear, and they were going la da 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 da, and my normal reaction would have been to shut it down and say, "You're not being a team player. How dare you?" They would have had their bad boss moment. They stopped and they said, "Oh, what I need to say is ABC." And they said it and they said it was like magic sauce. The person just neutralized and they came back into the team and we all had a healthy conversation. So yeah, it's definitely harder when it becomes past 2 people. when it's a te and so most leaders and managers have more than one direct report. They have a team. And so how do you get a whole team to function together and be a great boss isn't just those 5 leadership, 5 management practices, then the recipe of that team and how each human interacts and works within each other.
I think it's so funny that we teach this very simple, elegant system. That doesn't mean to say it's easy, it's not easy, to a bunch of highly complicated human beings who have all kinds of interpersonal narratives and stories and histories. And the fascinating thing that I think I experience all the time, because leadership teams change. Sometimes we add a new person, sometimes a person leaves the team, and that team has its own personality. You change one element of that, add a person, take a person out, it's a completely different team.
Oh,
And
and we know it's a recipe, right? The accountability chart is a recipe to human structure.
Mhm.
Is my chili in Texas, you wouldn't put beans in it. Right, so, it's and one of my uncles put chocolate in his because he liked that kind of sweet taste to it, so it just, like, what's the recipe of the team? And for it to function properly with clarity of role, that accountability chart to me is a very fascinating recipe. It's not just an exercise to get it documented, it's an exercise in human dynamic and nature and trying to get it to the right spot where it nurtures the right outcome for the organization and the team. So, yeah, it's interesting how when you start to see that in the thread that it's even happening in EOS, it'll help you facilitate, teach, and coach EOS differently.
humans.
They're fun. I just have to breathe every time because we all I have my own reaction. I had my own reaction as a bad boss. I was like, "Oh, I have to do this thing," and I was acting like a bad boss, and I was like, "Oh, I'm being human right now." I didn't know that I verbalized it that way, but now I do, and I see someone having a reaction, like, "Oh, they're having their human moment." And when I'm having a reaction, emotional processing, I'm having a human moment. I need to take a clarity break. I need to breathe. I need to maybe find space for gratitude. I need to IDS it to find solution. I need to take some action coming out of it, but I can't just sit in the reaction of it. Because then you do more behavior um, that can create more bad bossing, I guess. It's now what my niece calls I think I told you before we got on, I was trying to describe to this was many years ago to when my niece was 12, trying to describe EOS and being a facilitator, teacher, and coach to leadership teams to my 12-year-old niece, and it took, like, an hour just to get basics even clearer and translate it into her language, and, at the end of the hour, I was like, "I don't think she's getting it," and so she said, "I think I got it. You boss bosses around for a living." So, when you're bossing bosses around, it's a lot of control and letting go of the vine and having this you have to demonstrate if you're gonna boss bosses around all day, you gotta be a good boss, and so while they're not my direct reports, using those skills of the great boss, helps and understand the human dynamics that they're going through because they're humans too. Bosses make mistakes, bosses do sideways things, bosses do great things. How do we see those human moments and then process them appropriately?
Yeah, I mean, it's never a dull moment, and, for those of us that are addicted to the drama, I mean, all you have to do is go to work.
Yeah, I get to go into session tomorrow, it'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, it is fun too, especially when they have that watershed moment where they finally get real with themselves. I mean, it's usually, I would say, about a year into the process. I mean, 6 months, you're starting to see signs, but by a year in, a lot of that drama or a lot of the, bad behaviors and things like that have gone away because the tools are doing their job and they're working, and, oh my goodness, I have time on the weekends with my family, and I'm not writing emails at 10 o'clock at night anymore, and all of the things that they wanted for their business, they're actually starting to get, and they're getting those results. And when that happens, then the problems become the good problems. Like, all right, how do we leverage the growth trajectory that we're currently on? how do we bring new people into the organization? And so when that happens, isn't that just the most exciting thing? Yeah, it's really cool to see. And it's so you're so happy for them, right? Because they've gotten past so much of that stuff. They're out of the swampland, and they're onto actual dry ground. They're they're able to keep walking. So, you have another book. Can you tell me a little bit about that book?
Yeah, so that one is a rewrite of a book that came out 10 years ago called Optimize for Growth. It's now labeled Grow: How Entrepreneurial Leaders Optimize for Growth. And so Jonathan B. Smith and I co-authored that and added a bunch more stories and a little bit more science to the compounding effect of, if you're going to optimize yourself as a leader and entrepreneur, how do you do that out in the world for your company, for yourself? And so getting a coach, having a peer group, and having an operating system, the three things actually create a compounding effect of optimization. And we also used it, both he and I, and part of writing it again was helping peer group chairs, coaches, and EOS implementers understand how to work well together as a team to help these entrepreneurs optimize for growth. Instead of, so this whole idea of abundance together, we call it OR together: optimization, abundance, and reciprocity, that together we can change entrepreneurs' lives. And so kind of activating the potential so that we're not scarcity minded, coaches feeling like, well, if they do EOS, they won't use me anymore. And peer group advisors feeling like we all have to compete for budget, when really, when we work together, it's a much better outcome. So leading leaders and leading entrepreneurs. So that is a small book, but it's got a very simple, powerful concept to it.
I think it's absolutely true. I mean, I was in Vistage, like, from 2009 onward, only until a couple years ago, I left Vistage. But now I'm in strategic coach. So there's definitely a value in being in a peer group of some kind. Having a coach, right? Having a personal coach, somebody who can call you on your BS, call you out on your narratives. And it's not always negative, but into some of the encourage you into speaking better about yourself, right? And then lastly, having an operating system, a business operating system. These three things, the clients that I have that do all three are the ones that are like, so it is absolutely true. I 100% believe in that.
Yeah,
And
and it works on all levels, not just for your company and for you as an entrepreneur, but if we keep with the theme of bosses, right? I You learn from others' experience in your peer group. Your coach can help you one-on-one navigate your own emotional processing around it, or reactions, or even how do I give feedback? I want to dialogue this with someone else. And an operating system, which I already hinted at, EOS in particular, already has a lot of this baked in on how to do this well with team dynamics and getting to great coaching behavior.
Mhm. And wouldn't you agree that, like, the most dysfunctional teams that you work with are where none of those things exist?
They're very resistant to going through that vulnerability and discovery of, they don't want someone one-on-one giving feedback. They definitely don't want to reveal themselves to a peer group. And then the operating system, at least EOS, we shine lights on everything, so it makes them really uncomfortable. Yeah, they tend to quit. They they act as if they want to try it and they really don't, so they resist it the whole time. Yeah, they want to stay dysfunctional for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, the vulnerability is just such a key piece of all of this. And I still see people like, just get so caught up in their egos or how they're going to look, or I can't possibly, say that kind of thing in front of somebody. And here you were with Gary, and you're just like, Gary, I don't know what the hell we're doing here, but,
Yeah.
you know, and I just love that because I bet Gary thought you were pretty awesome after that.
I don't know if he thought I was awesome, but he definitely was thankful that I stopped the madness in that moment, right? Just like, this is, what the hell are we doing here? And I was like, I don't know. I really don't know. You're right. This is, I'm dealing with secondhand information. I'm correcting you for something that I'm not even sure you did, now that we're talking about it. I think ultimately this came back to something I did or a decision I made, and now you're going to be the fall person for it because someone else is feeling hurt and angry, or the board of directors was at this person, right? And so that they could, the board of directors, do something about this, it got funneled through me down to him, and it was all sideways behavior, and without going into the specific situation, because it would I don't even know if I remember it fully, but it's yeah, it was just so many iterations of a reaction before it got to that conversation that we were like, "We're just the byproduct of everyone else's ego, emotion, reaction, and wanting to solve this," and they pushed it as far downhill as they could, which is really bad bossing, the crap rolls downhill.
Yeah. You feel like
And
you're in a puppet show.
oh, yeah, I was like, "This is right out of some kind of movie," and here I am playing out my role in it, and all of a sudden I it's like almost like this awareness coming out of the puppet show, right? Coming almost like, "Whoa, wait a minute. We don't have to do this right now. Let's step out of it."
Yeah. I love it.
I didn't last very long there. I eventually, quit 2 months later.
Yeah, see, this is why I never really worked in corporate. I did for a time. My dad worked for, Swift Meats, and I did data processing, so I it was a very boring job, and I just thought that's what propelled me to film school and to get the heck out of the corporate world. But entrepreneurs, on the other hand, it's not that I was against business, I just didn't want it in that sort of sterile and fake environment, and I think that entrepreneurial teams are much more real, much more human, and I love being around them. So and as do you.
I had to laugh. My husband and I were talking about what we thought being in business would look like and being a leader of some sort would look like. And I said, I really thought because all the movies show guys and sometimes gals sharing carrying briefcases, dressing a certain way, that the very first thing I bought all the suits, I bought all the outfits and everything to look the part, so dress like a leader, dress like a boss. But I also the very first thing I did when I earned any incentive money, we had this catalog to, like, expend your points, right? The first thing I bought was a briefcase that I carried back and forth from home to work and work to home, and at that point, no one worked from home, we didn't really have computers at home, and this is the mid-90s. So I'm carrying this briefcase back and forth basically with my lunch in it,
Yeah.
because it made me look the part, and I got looking back, I'm wondering, I'm like, "I wonder how many people really had anything in their briefcase, we just carried stuff back and forth." I had my initials on it, it was very official.
Yeah, we came up in the same time, so it was interesting, like, working girl, I just think of Melanie Griffith and the padded shoulders and, like, "Oh my god." So I'm envisioning you in that outfit right now.
Totally, that's
Did
exactly the outfit I was in.
did you have, like, the big hair?
I had big hair, yeah, so, yeah, I graduated in the '80s. Went to college in the early '90s, so, yeah, I had the
Yeah.
big hair, the short gray skirt with the gray pads, like, yeah, everything, the bow collar, remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I suited up at pantyhose, I still had pantyhose then, and it was uncomfortable, and I carried the briefcase, and I think I eventually, donated that briefcase. I just ripped my little plaque of initials off and donated it, but it was still, like, crisp and new and hardly used, but I really thought that that would make me a better boss or a better leader or a better manager. I was on the track to do all those things, and if I looked the part, I could do it, and clearly, without really understanding humans on teams and understanding my role in activating their potential, without the training, without the support, we just thrown into the deep end, like you said, we're just thrown in and we try to act the part, and if you have any kind of sense of self or, you're willing to get vulnerable, it's frustrating. If you have a big ego and you're a narcissist, you don't know.
Right. Exactly.
So,
Yeah, and I think that finally the times have caught up with how we felt back then, and, when you're looking around and you're thinking, "I can't be a part of this, like, this piece of theater that is the corporate world. I can't be a part of that." Um, and now the soft skills, these are the most important, and people have finally figured it out, and it's kinda cool to
it
see.
is it is cool, and there's so much more opportunity to learn these things now.
Yeah, actually, yeah, absolutely. So, anyway, this has been a really great conversation. I'd love to get to the question that I ask everybody that comes on the show, which is, if you were to get a tattoo somewhere on your body that either told us a little bit more about you, who you are personally, or something related to this story, what would your tattoo be and where would it be located?
It's funny because I listened to the show, I knew it was coming, and so, my first reaction was I would never get a tattoo 'cause things are so temporary and change so fast that I'm a different person every time, but then I was like, "Okay, I just it deserves an answer."
Yeah.
So, I was thinking it'd probably be an eye above my
Mm.
heart, so you can see from the heart, and
Mm.
I did an exercise to try and, kinda go back in time to see the person you wanna be, and what would that person say your nickname was? And mine was BB, be present, be fully you. So it'd probably be an eye on the heart that says BB below it.
Hmm. That's very unique. I like that. Anyway, thanks so much, Jeanette, for being on the podcast and sharing a little bit about yourself. We got to learn more about you and more about humans, which is always fascinating.
Absolutely. Thanks, Beth.
Thanks to Jeanette Wade for reminding us that real leadership means keeping true to yourself when outside pressure wants you to be somebody else. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with friends who need to hear this. Thanks for listening to Bad Boss Confessional. We'll see you next week.